Okay, we're going to just demonstrate some swine AI. This is a gilt that we weaned pigs off of on Saturday. This is now Thursday. She was in heat starting yesterday, Wednesday afternoon. Just a couple of things that we have with us. We've got an AI rod. This is a foam tip rod. We're using a thing called an AI Buddy. This is just a tool that puts pressure on the sow at the right spots. We've got a tube of lube here. And then in our cooler, we'll open it up here in a second, is our fresh semen. That semen was collected on Monday. It was delivered to us on Tuesday. It's good for another 4 or 5 days in the cooler if we're doing it correctly. So we'll show you what to do. We'll get our sow turned around here to where you can see it. All right, so we're just gonna put this AI Buddy on her. And as soon as we start putting pressure on her, she's gonna stop. And so we're just gonna simulate the bore, basically, by riding. And so we've got our AI rod here. I'm just putting a couple of beads of lube on that rod. We're gonna come back and actually put all of our weight on it. We can see the vulva of the gill is pretty big and swollen. And so you can kind of zoom in there. We're going to put it in and go up at a 45 degree angle. And we're going to push until we can't really go anymore, and it'll lock into a cervix. Okay, we're going to pull her back where we can see just a little bit better. Okay, and so it's locked in now. We can come over to our cooler. We'll grab our semen. This is our semen. It's got a label. It shows the name of the boar that we're using. It's a Yorkshire boar. It shows the date that it was collected. We're trying to maintain that semen at 60 plus or minus degrees at all times. Every day we rotate that semen a couple of times to keep it and the extender blended together. Not a lot of shaking, just rotating. As you can see, it's capped. And so here we are back here, and we'll double check our rod again. These rods have a cap on the end, and I'll show you how to use that here in just a second. So we're going to take the end off of our pouch of semen here. We're going to hold it like that so that we don't squeeze anything out. And we're going to lock that into that rod. Okay, and then we're going to hold it up. A lot of these sows, if they're in really good heat, will actually, through uterine contraction, they'll actually draw that semen out of that patch, or out of the pouch. And she is just ever so slightly. But on those sows that we don't see a lot of draw to, we're just going to hold just gentle pressure to it. Just ever so slightly. We're not squeezing it. We're not letting it run back. And we're not in a big hurry here. Okay? We'll go back and put some pressure on the sow to simulate the bore again. And just a little bit more pressure. She's drawing a little bit as we speak. We'll put a little bit more pressure to her. This particular AI Buddy that we have on this sow is actually made for a bottle and not these semen pouches. Otherwise, we could turn it around and it'd actually hold it for us, and this sow could walk around. We just leave it on her and let her take it at her leisure. So once again, we're just putting a little bit of pressure to her. Around here. You can see we're already putting semen in her. This particular gilt's she's on her way out of heat. Otherwise, that's probably why she's moving just ever so slightly. These gilts typically, when they're in good standing heat, this will be her last service. When they're in really good standing heat, we put that AI buddy on them, and they'll lock up, and then they'll not move the rest of the time. We'll take our legs every now and again, and we'll kind of tap her sides with it to simulate the bore. We can also use a bore spray on the snout of these gilts. That is the pheromone of a boar, to go ahead once again and simulate the presence of a boar. We know it's in the cervix because we don't see any semen running back out the vulva. And so we're just continuing to put just a little bit of pressure to it, not much. She's taking it quite nicely. So we'll service these gilts at least twice. And now that she's emptied the pouch, we'll come over, we'll put just a little bit of air back into it. We'll push the remaining semen out of the rod. We'll feel it go. Then we'll pull that off, and I'll just cap that rod, and we'll leave it there just for a minute or two. We'll just maintain pressure. We'll make sure that all that semen stays in the cervix, or actually in the uterus. And so whenever we remove that rod, we'll actually remove the stopper. And so we'll leave that in there just for a few minutes. So once again, the suckling response of the suckling of those piglets inhibits estrus in these sows. And so when we remove those piglets, we administer one dose of PG600 to the sow in the muscle, right on the either side of to the vulva, and then usually those sows are in heat in about 3 or 4 days. So now we're just going to kind of uncork it just a little bit. Cervix of a sow is actually kind of a corkscrew type shape, and so we'll just pull back, and we'll see a little bit of semen run back out of the sow, but not much. And then we'll pull it out and down at a 45-degree angle, and she's done.